Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on the Friday edition of India Business Hour. Warm welcome to all our viewers who are joining us on YouTube. I'm Shireen Bhan. Here are the big stories that we're tracking for you this evening. State Bank of India posts an operationally weak quarter. The decline in net interest margins is the highest in 6 years. Loan growth at 1% is the slowest in the last 7 quarters. Profit, though, more than doubles on the back of rising non-interest income. 12% yearly growth in deposits is the best in 6 years. Apple's revenue slump for the 3rd straight quarter, but India is the bright spot with revenues at a record high. Tim Cook says India is a huge opportunity, adds they will be putting all their energies in growing business here. The government clarifies that the restrictions on the import of laptops and tablets will kick in only after a transition period. Sources say the order mandating an import license may be pushed by a month, adding that goods in transit will not be impacted. The big political story: the Supreme Court stays Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's conviction in the Modi surname defamation case, says the trial court imposed the maximum 2-year sentence without any reason. Legal experts tell CNBC-TV18 that post the court's verdict, Gandhi's Lok Sabha disqualification stands null and void. The Speaker will take a call on his return to Parliament. Mahindra Group CEO Anish Shah assures investors that capital allocation policy remains unchanged. This after making a 400 crore rupee investment into RBL Bank. Adds the group will not invest any further in the bank unless it sees compelling strategic value. M&M also beats estimates in Q1 as profits nearly double. S&P Global expects India to become the 3rd largest economy by 2031, expects GDP at $6.7 trillion at an annual growth rate closer to 7%. Former U.S. President Donald Trump pleads not guilty to charges that he tried to overturn the 2020 election loss. Trump is accused of promoting false claims that the election was rigged and assembling fake electors, declaring Trump as a winner. Haryana remains tense with reports of sporadic incidents of violence. More than 200 people have been arrested so far. Bulldozers razed 250 shanties in a town near New where the violence began. Authorities claim the shanties were illegally built on government land. Meanwhile, the village of Ghasera in New district emerges as a beacon of communal harmony. Well, as always, let's start with the stock market action. Stock markets have managed to snap a 3-day losing streak. Let's walk across to our wall to tell you what the Sensex and the Nifty did today. So that's the story as far as the day is concerned. The Nifty closing 135 points higher, the Sensex 480 points higher, the Nifty Bank up 366 points, and the Nifty Midcap 100 gained about 300 points. That was the story for today, but for the week, the indices are down 1%, and this is the 2nd straight week of decline that we have seen for the Nifty. Mid-caps have relatively outperformed the blue chips. That is with a gain of about 1% for the week. That was the story as far as the markets are concerned, but we continue to be in the midst of earnings season, and let us start with the biggest bank of India. The big earnings of the day: State Bank of India reporting an operationally weak quarter. So the net interest income decline has been the highest for SBI that we've seen in 6 years. Meanwhile, loan growth has come in at 1%, which is the slowest that we've seen for the bank in 7 quarters. However, the State Bank of India has recorded its highest ever quarterly net profit, and that is on the back of high non-interest income. SBI Chairman Dinesh Kharad told my colleague Ritu Singh that he does not see any challenge to the bank's asset quality from the corporate book. Take a look.
I don't expect much of a challenge from the corporate book. Whatever little challenge I expect is from agri and SME to some extent. But I think more or less we should be in a position to ensure that we keep the book as much good as perhaps we could keep it last year.
So any targets you'd have in mind, whether it is credit
I would
cost
like to,
or maintaining?
I would only say that I would like to keep it minimum possible. Okay. Credit cost is first quarter is 0.36,
yeah,
but we would like to keep it below 0.50. Our only focus is that if at all the risk quality is something which is palatable to us, we'll be more than happy to support it.
Well, that is SBI Chief Dinesh Khara in conversation with Ritu Singh. And staying with earnings, let's now talk about Mahindra and Mahindra. It posted a strong first quarter ahead of street expectations on all parameters. Now, Mahindra and Mahindra's net profit has nearly doubled, while revenues jumped 23% compared to last year. And this has been on the back of a strong performance coming in from its auto, farm and services verticals. The company's management has said that M&M will not invest more in RBL Bank unless they see a compelling strategic value. Remember, this became a controversial headline over the past week after M&M decided to invest in RBL Bank. Moving on to global earnings now, tech giant Apple reporting its third quarter results, meeting subdued expectations. Now, with this, Apple's revenues declined for 3 straight quarters. However, India has emerged as a bright spot for the company. Hormuz is standing by now to take us through the details of why Tim Cook and Apple are betting on India. Hormuz.
Tim Cook has been pretty bullish on India, and he mentioned this when he was here during the opening of the stores as well. So let's take a look at what Apple mentioned about India during their earnings call. And India finds them mentioned about 9 times in their earnings call transcript. And they began by saying that the revenues from the India operations were at a record high. And we must keep in mind that the stores in Bombay and in Delhi were opened towards the later half of April. So there was still a little headroom. And despite that, there were record high revenues from the stores. And Tim Cook also mentioned that the performance of both of these stores has been higher than what was Apple's initial expectations. Now, they also mentioned that they are investing significantly in building their direct-to-consumer channels. But the highlight of the earnings call was Tim Cook's commentary on the growth runway that India has. And he said that there is a significant opportunity for growth simply because India is the world's second largest smartphone market, and Apple still has a very minuscule share. So there is a significant headroom for growth that Apple has in India. Now, coming to the numbers, well, it was a fairly dull quarter for Apple. Revenues were down 1%. The iPhone revenue, which is their biggest business, that was down 2%. The iPad revenue was down 20%. And the management is saying that the September quarter is going to be no different, and revenues may decline there as well. So if that happens, that will be the 4th straight revenue decline for Apple, which will be their worst streak in 20 years. And rightly so, the stock was down in after-hours trading when the numbers were announced, and it's down in pre-market trading as well. So all in all, a forgettable quarter for Apple, but India is certainly the apple of their eye.
Well, India clearly is the apple of Apple's eye. Hormuz, many thanks for joining us. But we're staying with global earnings now. Let's switch to Amazon, which has reported a very strong quarter, beating street estimates across all parameters. Amazon has issued a positive guidance as well, projecting an acceleration in revenue growth. Amazon reported a jump in revenue of over $134 billion, making it the tech giant's biggest earnings beat since the 4th quarter of 2020. Well, back home, it's been a setback for phone maker Oppo in its tussle with Nokia in the patent infringement case. Now, the Supreme Court has essentially refused to put a stay on the Delhi High Court order, which directed Oppo to deposit 23% of its India sales as a royalty for alleged infringement of Nokia's patents. The apex court has given Oppo 3 weeks to make the payment to Nokia. Staying with court matters, the Madras High Court has dismissed 14 of the 16 pleas from Indian startups and tech companies against Google's application billing policy. Now, the court has ordered that the issue falls under the jurisdiction of the Competition Commission of India, and any order passed by it will be applicable to all businesses. However, the court has not dismissed pleas made by Disney and Hotstar, as well as exam preparation app Testbook. So those have been entertained. The other petitions have been dismissed. 4 months after he was convicted by the Surat court for mocking the Modi surname, the country's top court has granted relief to Congress leader Rahul Gandhi. The Supreme Court has stayed Gandhi's conviction in the defamation case. In fact, the Supreme Court said that while it did not wish to comment on the merits of the case, it expected the trial court to have given reasons for imposing the maximum sentence of 2 years, which triggered Rahul Gandhi's disqualification. Now, the Supreme Court has observed that Gandhi's remarks were in poor taste, but he wouldn't have faced disqualification if the jail term was even a day less than 2 years. The Congress party has hailed the Supreme Court's verdict, calling it the victory of truth. Legal experts speaking to CNBC-TV18 say that post the Supreme Court's verdict, Gandhi's Lok Sabha disqualification stands null and void. The Speaker will now take a call on Gandhi's return to Parliament.
आज नहीं तो कल, कल नहीं तो परसों सच्चाई की जीत होती है। मगर जो भी हो, मेरा रास्ता तो क्लियर है। मुझे क्या करना है, मेरा क्या काम है, उसके बारे में मेरे दिमाग में बिल्कुल क्लैरिटी है। जिन लोगों ने हमारी मदद की और जनता ने जो प्यार और सपोर्ट दिया, उसके लिए मैं बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूं।
It took some time. From 2019, the complainant himself delayed the matter and suddenly accelerated the proceedings to result in the conviction. And since then, Shri Rahul Gandhi has shown exemplary courage, restraint, and a great faith in the judicial process.
So relief coming in there for Rahul Gandhi. His return to Parliament, of course, will be decided by the Speaker. Now, staying with news from Parliament, the Health Ministry has said that the food regulator, that is the FSSAI Special Enforcement Drive for Health Supplements, has found that 202 of the 1,200 samples collected were non-compliant with regulations. This is in reply to a question on the sale of unsafe dietary supplements, and this has been replied to in Parliament in the Lok Sabha. The ministry also said that appropriate action was taken against companies which were found to be non-compliant after this drive took place in the month of March. The Supreme Court has refused to hear Yes Bank founder Rana Kapoor's bail plea in the DHFL money laundering case. The court has said it will not ignore Kapoor's role in the crime as well as the magnitude and seriousness of the offence. The apex court has also acknowledged the significant impact of the case on the entire financial system and urged the Enforcement Directorate to complete the investigation at the earliest. Vedanta has appointed John Slaven as the Chief Executive Officer for the company's aluminum business. Slaven's appointment will come into effect from the 3rd of October for a period of 3.5 years. The company's also appointed Stephen Russell Moore as the Deputy CEO of its subsidiary, Kane Oil and Gas. Now, the situation in Haryana remains tense after communal clashes in the new district, which triggered a flare-up in other parts of the state, leading to the death of 6 people. While the state continues to see heavy police deployment across several districts, over 200 people have been arrested so far. A few isolated incidents of arson have been reported as well. The state government reportedly had bulldozers raze 250 shanties in a town near Nu, where the violence began. Authorities claim the shanties were illegally built on government land. As of now, more than 200 people stand arrested in Haryana by the authorities. Well, staying with Haryana, Nu, Gurugram and other parts of Haryana are seeing an increased presence of security personnel in the wake of the series of communal clashes that we've seen. But even as parts of the region report violent incidents that include shops and houses being burnt, one village in the heart of this violence-torn region is standing apart as a beacon of unity. CNBC-TV18's Shivani Bazaz reports from Ghasera in Nu.
Almost 30 kilometers ahead of Badshapur in Gurugram is Gandhigram of village Ghaseda. Right in the middle of Nu and Badshapur that were rocked by communal tension and arson in the last couple of days. A Muslim-dominated village with around 150 Hindu families. In the last 1 week since the communal tension broke out in the area, the Muslims of the village along with their Hindu neighbors are guarding the only temple in the village.
मंदिर की हिफाजत कर रहे हैं हम ताकि कोई बाहर के तत्व आके कोई ऐसा फितना फसाद ना करे, तोड़ फोड़ ना करे। बाहर के जो लोग आते हैं वहाँ भड़काते हैं। हमारा भाईचारा बहुत अच्छा है यहाँ पे।
Muhammad Irfan and Mukesh Kumar are a part of 14-member team which keeps a watch on the only temple in the village. They stand watch through the night, taking turns to go on rounds and sleep on a terrace near the temple.
हमारे 10 आदमी तो मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी से रहते हैं और 4 आदमी हिंदू कम्युनिटी से रहते हैं। रात को यहीं हिफाजत के लिए 10 आदमी के इकट्ठे होकर ही रहते हैं। अपने रात को चौकीदारी करते हैं, बैटरी लाइट वाइट से वैसे पूरी कर रहे हैं हिफाजत।
Mukesh Kumar's family has lived in the village for over 4 generations and says that while the violence in Nu scared him, the support of his neighbors gives him a sense of security.
फर्स्ट में तो जब लगा, फिर उसके बाद जब आगे हमारे पास सरपंच साहब आगे थे, कोई डरने की जरूरत नहीं है, आराम से रहो, हम तुम्हारे साथ हैं, ऐसी बात हुई थी। फिर पार्षद साहब आगे थे, वली पार्षद पहले थे, फिर पूर्व सरपंच है, रात उनने भी गश्त करी, अशरफ सरपंच आए थे रात।
तो जी हम ये हमारा मंदिर है और हम यहाँ जो है हमारे बाप दादा परदादा सरदादा टोटल मतलब यही कि हमारी पैदाइश ही हमारे बाप दादा रहता है, जब भी हम इस मंदिर को देख भी रहे हैं। और हमारा बहुत अच्छा भाईचारा है। और बाहर के लोगों की सिर्फ वजह क्या है कि हमारे जो बाहर के लोग आते हैं वह इस दंगे फिसाद को भड़काते हैं। नहीं, हमारे यहाँ कोई ऐसी दिक्कत नहीं है। जब तक जो है ये दंगा रहेगा जब तक हिफाजत करेंगे। और उसके बाद में हम लोग पड़ोसी, हम तो इसकी साल से साल करते ही रहते हैं।
This is not the first time the locals of this village have come together to protect each other and the temple.
प्राचीन काफी समय से रह रहे हैं, जब से गांव बसा है जी, और जब से ये मंदिर है। हम अल्पसंख्यक जरूर है जी, लेकिन हमारे गांव का वातावरण बहुत अच्छा है। सन 92 में भी एक कांड हुआ था जी, तो उसमें भी इन लोगों ने हमारी पूरी मदद की थी। और इसमें रात को जो गांव के करीब आदमी थे 15-20 रखवाली रखते थे कि कोई बाहरी आदमी आके कोई नुकसान ना पहुंचा जाए मंदिर। वही सिस्टम अब फिलहाल चल रहा है जी। नहीं, अब से पहले तो कोई डर नहीं था, लेकिन अब डर है जी। बाहर जाने के लिए ना जी बच्चे संकोच करते हैं जी, डरते भी हैं जी।
20-year-old Jed and Hariom, who have been friends since childhood, also take turns with the neighborhood watch. They say that while the village is seeing peace, they are afraid to step out of the village.
हम काफी बचपन से दोस्त रहे हैं, काफी एक साथ है, लेकिन हम फिलहाल भी एक साथ रह रहे हैं। हमें कोई गांव में तो कोई डर का माहौल नहीं है।
हम दोनों बचपन से ही दोस्त हैं, एक साथ पढ़ते हैं, एक साथ लिखते हैं, एक साथ ही खाते हैं, एक साथ स्कूल जाते हैं और इसी गांव के रहने वाले हैं। मतलब जैसा कि सुनने में आ रहा है कि ये हिंदू मुस्लिम का ये मतलब ये बैर बना रखा है, ऐसा है वैसा, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है हमारे यहाँ।
हम एक दूसरे के लिए जान भी दे सकते हैं मैम, लेकिन बचाने की बात तो ऐसी रही कि हम बाहर तो फिलहाल तो जाएंगे नहीं, क्योंकि बाहर कुछ भी हो सकता है, लेकिन गांव में ऐसा कुछ हम होने नहीं देंगे।
In the darkness, we all need a ray of hope. Gandhigram of village Ghaseda is the story of such hope in the darkness of violence and fear that has engulfed the adjoining areas of Nu, Sona and Badshapur in Haryana. The communal harmony and friendships of this village have stood the test of time, and the villagers here believe that this tough time will pass soon. In Haryana's Nu district, with Vijay Rajinder Raina, this is Shivani Bazaz for CNBC-TV18.
Well, a beacon of hope, harmony and unity. Coming up next on India Business Hour, the government clarifies that the restrictions on the import of laptops and tablets will kick in only after a transition period of about a month or so. Also catch all our CNBC-TV18 news and updates on Facebook, Twitter, Twitter Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. Well, you are watching India Business Hour with me, Shireen Bhan. Let's go to the other big stories that we are tracking this evening. Now, the government has clarified that the restrictions on the import of laptops and tablets will kick in only after a transition period. Government sources say the order mandating an import license may be pushed out by a month or so. Ashmit Kumar is standing by with the details. Ashmit, an important clarification. So, a delay in the rollout or the execution of the import curbs that the government had announced.
Well, post the notification to quell some of the industry concerns, the government has reached out to a lot of these players to address and to answer some of these concerns that were raised, and it's trying to do so by important decisions that are coming out in the next 24 to 48 hours. What are these decisions? What are the takeaways? We learned from highly placed sources that number one, this is perhaps the most important clarification coming in. This notification which came out was effective immediately. Highly placed sources tell us that this is likely to be extended by at least 1 month. This the government believes will allow for enough time for the importers to acquire the necessary licenses and to ensure continuity of the imports. That's one. The second is DGFT, importantly, is expected to come out with a clarification that will give a better picture of the fact that there are no restrictions on, number one, the goods being imported, the quantum of goods being imported, or the entities which are importing these goods, laptops, tablets, as well as PCs. That's number two. Number three, and this is an important takeaway here, the government is looking to extend support in terms of there being no restrictions or no difficulty in terms of goods which are currently in transit. That is the clarification number three. And the fourth clarification, equally important, the government has sought to assure that even the licenses for these restricted items will be issued in a matter of minutes, less than 24 hours. That's the window that the DGFT is likely to give, and therefore no disruptions are likely to be experienced. From a customer standpoint, the government has sought to assure that there is, since there will be no disruptions in imports, and therefore there is no question of any hike in prices, and the government is keeping its fingers crossed, hoping that all of this put together will give more impetus to the domestic manufacturing industry.
Ashwat, many thanks for joining us. In fact, staying with that story, the domestic industry has welcomed the move. The chairman of the India Cellular and Electronic Association, Pankaj Mahindra, said he's confident that valid licenses will be provided to trusted industry partners. Meanwhile, Hari Om Rai of Lava Mobile says that process is in place to ensure that supply chain will continue as usual. So those are the comments that have come in from industry on the laptop curbs that have been announced. Now, S&P Global expects the Indian economy to grow at an average annual rate of nearly 7% till 2031, and that puts India on the path to becoming the third largest economy by 2031, with an estimated GDP of $6.7 trillion. The report also says that India's growth will be driven by manufacturing and services exports, coupled with demand. However, the report does highlight the need for India to capitalize on its demographic dividend by increasing labor force participation and upskilling. Take a look.
As India's private spending continues to rise, as the consumer market doubles over the next 7 to 8 years, we're going to see a huge increase in Indian consumer spending on many manufacturers. So I think that will, at the end of the day, be the crucial driver for India's manufacturing sector growth. There's a lot to be, I think, to be proud of for India and what's already happened. And I think it's a very exciting future ahead in the next 10 years.
Well, that's the big call from S&P for the Indian economy. Now, a CNBC-TV18 exclusive, India's domestic crude oil production has fallen over 14% in FY23, with ONGC and Vedanta contributing to the decline. In a response to Parliament, the Petroleum Ministry said ONGC's crude oil production dropped by 7%, while Vedanta's output fell 34%. Sapna joins us now with the details. Sapna, so what's the reason for this decline?
Well, clearly there haven't been any big oil strikes in the last couple of years. Most of it has been dry, and particularly if you look at ONGC, they have very aging wells. Apart from this, probably the windfall tax has also played it has played a negative role, though of course it has come only in the last 1 odd year, and this decline has been more sequential year on year last couple of years. But still, for the private sector, especially the windfall tax, is not good news at all. Vedanta has been very vociferous in voicing their concerns on that. But having said that, let's look at this critical and interesting data that the Petroleum Ministry has shared with the Parliament. Not only Vedanta and ONGC's output is down. Vedanta, of course, 34% in the last 5 odd years, which is very, very significant. That is one of the major private sector players in this space so far. So overall, India's production is down by close to 15% odd. And consequently, what has happened is that the share of domestic supply of crude oil has also come down significantly. In the last 5 odd years, it was 15% odd earlier, it's down to 12.5%. So obviously that space has now been taken up by rising oil imports. Just in the last 3 years, India's oil imports have risen over 18% odd. That's quite a big number. And just look at the tab that the government is bearing, despite the fact that we have been getting discounted oil from Russia. So just in the last 3 odd years, $62 billion was the oil import tab in FY21. This has shot up by 153% to $157 billion. In fact, actually more than that. So if we convert that in the Indian currency, end of FY23, at that point in time, it was 12 lakh crores. So from 4.5 lakh crores, the tab has gone to 12 lakh crores. The options are very few and far in between. mean, long-term policy options, government will have to look at the oil fields, you know, in a new form and fashion probably.
Yeah.
But can't say much on that front. And the other options, of course, switching to alternative energy sources. But then that again is a long haul.
Right, Sapna, appreciate you joining us. The decline in domestic crude oil production is a cause for concern, as Sapna was pointing out. Another CNBC-TV18 exclusive tonight. The finance backed by Westbridge Capital is planning to hit Dalal Street. Sources say the company will likely raise more than 1,800 crore rupees through a combination of fresh issue and an offer for sale. It's looking at a valuation of 6,500 crore rupees via the initial public offer. Now, after 7 years, former Microsoft India President and CEO Anant Maheshwari is heading back to Honeywell. He will join Honeywell as the President and CEO of its high-growth region, which includes China, India, Southeast Asia, Africa and Latin America. Maheshwari will report directly to Honeywell's newly appointed global CEO Vimal Kapoor and will be located in Dubai. Maheshwari held a leadership role at Honeywell between 2004 and 2016 and was named President of Honeywell India before he moved to Microsoft India. Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. From all of us here on the team, goodbye. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. We will see you on Monday. From the team, thanks for watching.